all the research shows that children thrive best in stable, loving families, and some children only find a family like that through adoption, often after years of neglect or abuse by their birth families. But children from minority races and cultures have far less hope of getting that vital second chance because there are not enough matching adoptive parents coming forward. So our question, should adoption be colourblind? And Sue Cotton, I mean, you work very much in this area. It's important to say that you set up the London Black Families, an adoption agency that recruits families from ethnic minority backgrounds.
That's right.
Some would say, though, hang on a minute, black babies, black children for black families, white children for white families. This is a little bit Nick Griffin, isn't it?
I don't think so. I think what adoption is about finding a family that's going to be the most successful family for that child. We know that adoption, as you said, has got much better outcomes for children than remaining in care. And there are things that are important in adoption. One is a sense of belonging, of stability, and being able to understand your identity and having that to take with you for life.
What do you mean by your identity?
Your identity is all sorts of things about you. Your race, your ethnicity, your culture is one part of that identity, but your identity is made up about a lot of issues. We know by counselling people who are adopted transracially, 60s, 70s and early 80s, that although they may have had a very successful adoption in lots of ways, what was missing for them was a sense of belonging.
But you can say, I'm adopted. I mean, there is that little question mark in your life. You think, I wonder where, I wonder what.
Absolutely.
But all adopted, especially when you're a teenager, you have that even more, don't you?
There was a really interesting study that looked at that, and it is there for a lot of people who were adopted. And for people who have been trying to find out about their birth families, of those, 46% of white adopters who were adopted in white families also reported that issue about belonging, about that sense of identity. 75% of people who were placed transracially reported that there was an issue for them about their sense of belonging and identity. There was a much bigger gap there in terms of that need for the identity.
Would you rather a child, a black child, for example, spent longer in care before a family was found than be adopted too soon into a white family?
What we think is there are families out there.
That's a fair,
we think there are families out there for children.
But if there are not, would you rather wait because you know all the problems that care can bring in later life or the outcomes as you would predict? Would you rather wait and find a black family? We
would rather find a family that can meet most of those children's needs.
Jenny Trent Hughes.
I have an enormous problem with that logic and concept, and I'm sure you're a lovely lady and you're coming from this from a very good place, but it really makes me want to cry for lots of different reasons. For example, my son is half Jamaican American and half Irish. So what if something had happened when I was younger? Who would then have had to adopt him? Who would have been able to adopt him? I think that is to me, a very sort of 60s, 70s attitude. We're living in the 21st century now.
But there are enough problems with identity, with feeling different, without the extra burden of looking so different.
So what? Well, you've seen my son. My son is 6'2", white, light blonde, blondish hair and bright blue eyes. So what? Do I love him any less when I look at him? Do I wish that he was a different color? Does he wish I was a different color? We need to move with the times. If people, I have had so many friends, and it's hilarious, friends who have been black or mixed race, and they've been adopted by white families. White families who adopt black or mixed race children tend to go out of their way even more to make sure that the kids know all about their heritage.
Simon, you were adopted in a white family, mixed race, in, where was it, Yeovil? Yeah. And what were the problems? What were the challenges? Because, 1 in 10 children now are mixed race. It's an incredible amount in our melting pot culture. What were the problems?
Yeah, well, I think the difference for me, first of all, I had very successful adoption, exactly what you were talking about. But I think the difference for me is not only was I adopted with a white family, I was also adopted in Somerset in the 70s, where there just wasn't any ethnic minority people around. Very practical things like what to do with my big bushy hair. No one had a clue with, and it was I hated it.
You've solved that problem now.
That's why it's off.
Okay, right.
I had a childhood of this mop with insects and all sorts.
Well,
of
surely, but that, it would be different now because there's much more knowledge brought to adoption about.
Possibly, absolutely possibly. But some of the other issues for me is, particularly at school, we were taught very much white history. You know, my role models were white people. The images of black people I got was very negative, and I really struggled to sort of like weigh up, okay, what is this thing that's different about me? And I think when I came to Birmingham, amongst a much more multicultural setting, I would think I didn't know quite where I fitted. Black people would talk to me in patois. I think, what on earth are you talking about? And all sorts of issues around
it could equally be a class thing, couldn't it? It could be. Is it completely down to rate? You were going to wanted to come into.
Because my husband's black African, so I've got 4 children who are mixed race, and I do sympathise with your concerns about identity. Because my own children, who are living with a black African man and a white, English woman, they have issues with identity, and we've done absolutely everything we can to try and address those. But they still feel at some deep level there's some sort of issue there with identity. Now, I would say probably if I died and had they been younger, because they're in their 20s now, it would be better for them to go into adoption probably with a white family if there wasn't a mixed race or black family available. But, there is an issue of identity there. I don't know whether it can be solved at all. I'm beginning to think it's just difficult when you are a minority in, a larger society which tends to be more white. I don't know.
Isn't the biggest problem not having a loving, caring, secure, stable family? Isn't that the main issue here? Stability and love.
The key issue for children is that they've got a stable, permanent family. When you're looking for an adoptive family, you need to find a family that can best give them that, that's going to have the best chance of succeeding and giving them the best opportunity as they go into adult life.
You might be waiting forever because there are few ethnic minority adopters. This is the problem.
I don't think we're talking about a child waiting forever. We know that we can recruit families from black and minority ethnic backgrounds. We've got families waiting for children. Last year we've placed 95 children within our families. We placed 50 children last year. That's a tenth of the children waiting.
Being in care for too long, damages outcomes, damages children's educational achievement.
And I would never argue for a child to remain in care. What I would say is that we believe that there are families out there who can meet the whole set of a child's needs, and more effort needs to put in to finding families that can appropriately meet child's needs. It's not just children who are from black and minority ethnic backgrounds, it's for children who have sibling groups. We've got lots of difficulties finding families who can look after 2 or 3 children.
Well, you've adopted some children,
yes,
haven't you,
yep.
Robin and Ian, in the States,
yep.
where they're kind of, certainly in some states, they're far more of a colour-blind policy there now. It's complicated, but it's moving in that direction. And here you wanted to adopt just what Sue was talking about, some sibling mixed-race children, and you have been knocked back, haven't you?
Yes, basically told because we were white that they wouldn't even consider us. And one of the things that we do have 3 adopted children from California, and we have a biological son as well. And we always wanted to adopt, and we wanted to adopt children that were a little bit harder to place. So we have drug babies and a few other issues that other people would kind of shy away from. And there's a magazine in the UK called Children Who Wait. And if you look at it, it's primarily children with disabilities, children of color, and children who are in sibling sets. And if you look at the singletons in there, you will see most of them want contact with their siblings who are adopted elsewhere.
Yes.
So we're really passionate about keeping families together if you possibly can, especially children who have been placed into care with maybe the brother or sister or both, and then when they've become freed for adoption, they get separated.
Waiting to provide a loving, stable home. What's possibly the problem there, Sue?
I mean, I can't comment on your particular circumstances.
But you can, because they're white, and there's mixed-race children that they want to adopt.
I can't talk about their particular circumstances because I don't know all of the issues around them.
Well, we know the big issue.
But what I do know is that we are successfully placing children. We've had none of our adoption placements have broken down. They've all been very successful. And we know that we've listened to what people have said to us who've been adopted in the past, who have come back to us, and where that issue has been really important.
I think we agree, and this is something that we don't want to sound like we should be able to open a magazine and say, we'd like those, please, and deliver them on Tuesday. We don't believe that at all. And we do believe that if you can ethnically match children, that's one part of their identity, absolutely. And it is one part of their identity where they're absolutely physically from. But I think that there are a lot more children, when you look at, for example, the magazine I'm talking about, that are